Cousin laughed at me for not having a job until she realized I signed her paychecks. The cardboard box felt heavier than it should have as I carried it out of Pinnacle Technologies. 7 years reduced to a potted succulent, framed certificates, and a chipped company mug. Budget cuts, they had said. Nothing personal. My phone buzzed with Mom's call, probably about Aunt Deborah's birthday dinner night. I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't tell her I'd just been laid off, not yet. My parents had always been so proud of my stable corporate job. As I pulled into my apartment complex, a strange sense of lightness came over me. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about tomorrow's presentation or next week's performance review. Instead of updating my resume, I opened a folder labeled Someday on my laptop. Inside were wireframes, code snippets, and business plans for a SaaS platform designed to streamline freelance management, a solution to problems I'd witnessed firsthand at Pinnacle. Maybe someday isn't someday anymore, I whispered. Hours later, Mom called again. Rachel, where are you? Everyone's already here. Aunt Deborah's asking about you. I glanced at the time. 7:30 p.m. I'd completely forgotten. 20 minutes later, I hurried up the walkway to my aunt's house, having made a quick decision. I wouldn't mention losing my job. Not yet. Well, look who finally decided to show up. Busy day at the corporate ladder factory. My cousin Talia stood by the kitchen island, wine glass in hand, designer dress showing off her perfect figure. Her smile was bright, but her eyes held that familiar competitive glint. Something like that, I muttered, reaching past her for the wine. You look exhausted. Those desk jobs will suck the life right out of you. She flipped her glossy dark hair. I closed 3 major accounts this week. Commission checks are going to be sweet. That's great, I said. Congrats. Thanks. Just got promoted to senior sales executive. They're even sending me to Miami next quarter. She leaned in. So, what's new with you? Still crunching numbers for the same bosses. The question stung more than it should have. Actually, I'm exploring some new opportunities. It wasn't exactly a lie. Opportunities? That's vague. Aunt Deborah called everyone for cake, giving me the perfect escape. For the rest of the evening, I nodded through conversations while my mind raced with possibilities. I had savings that could last 6 months if I was careful. I had the technical skills and industry knowledge. Maybe getting laid off wasn't a setback, but an opportunity. As people began to leave, Talia approached with her car keys. Heading out already? I asked. Early meeting tomorrow. Some of us can't just coast through our careers. She smiled sweetly. Oh, by the way, Mom told me Pinnacle's been having layoffs. Your department affected. Heat rushed to my face. Had she somehow found out? I'm fine, I said curtly. My team's solid. Good to hear. Well, don't work too hard in that little cubicle of yours. Live a little. As she turned to leave, she called over her shoulder just loud enough for others to hear. And maybe update your LinkedIn sometime. That profile picture is from what, 2018? That night, I couldn't sleep. Talia's condescension echoed in my head, mingling with the shame of being laid off and the excitement of my budding idea. I opened my laptop and created a new document. Project Cybertech, 6-month plan. By sunrise, I had outlined everything: market research, development timeline, potential investors, budget projections. I'd even registered the domain name. Over the next few weeks, I established a routine. Wake at 6 a.m., code until noon, research until dinner, more coding until midnight. Repeat. I declined invitations and used work as an excuse, which wasn't entirely untrue. I was working harder than I ever had at Pinnacle, but each line of code felt like building something truly mine. My savings dwindled. I downgraded my phone plan, canceled subscriptions, and cooked at home. When the next family dinner rolled around, I almost skipped it, but Mom's texts wore me down. You sure they're not working you to death because of all the layoffs? Talia asked over dinner. I heard Pinnacle cut another 15% last week. I'm fine, I repeated. Must be nice to have such job security, she said, addressing the whole table. Meanwhile, I'm sweating to meet quotas every month. My uncle patted her hand. But you're doing so well, honey. Didn't you just buy that new car? Talia beamed. The Audi? Yeah. Finally decided to treat myself after landing the Netsphere account. The conversation shifted to Talia's achievements while I retreated into silence. Part of me wanted to blurt out the truth, that I was building something potentially revolutionary. But a stronger part wanted to prove it first. As I was leaving, Talia caught me at the door. Some of us from Meridian are going to happy hour on Friday, she said. You should join. It might be good for you to network, just in case those layoffs ever do hit your department. Thanks, but I can't. I'll be working late. You still living that pajama lifestyle? She laughed, loud enough for my parents to overhear. Must be nice to not have a job. I bit my tongue, gripping my car keys until they hurt my palm. She didn't know I was coding day and night to build something that could change my life, and ironically, maybe hers too. As I drove home, her mocking laughter faded, replaced by determination. Let her think what she wanted. I'd show them all eventually, but only when I was ready. I pulled into my parking spot at 8:30 p.m. and smiled. I still had hours of coding ahead of me tonight, and I couldn't wait to get started. 3 months into building Cybertech, my apartment had transformed. My dining table disappeared beneath monitors and notebooks. Whiteboards covered my walls with flowcharts and user journey maps. The kitchen counter held more coffee cups than cookware. This wasn't just a project anymore, it was my entire world. While my savings account shrank, my technical skills grew exponentially. I enrolled in advanced coding boot camps, spending 14-hour days absorbing everything from cloud architecture to UI/UX principles. When the courses couldn't teach me fast enough, I found mentors on developer forums who reviewed my code for free, impressed by the concept behind Cybertech. My phone lit up with a text from Mom. Sunday dinner at 5. Talia has big news. Please come. I sighed. I'd skipped the last 2 family gatherings, making excuses about deadlines. In reality, I couldn't bear facing Talia's success stories while I lived off ramen and hope. Can't make it. Working. I replied, then returned to debugging. 20 minutes later, Mom called. I reluctantly answered. Rachel, honey, we're worried about you. Your father says you haven't been to the gym in months. Dad's monitoring my gym visits now. He saw you canceled your membership when he was there last week. Are you having money problems? You know we can help. The concern in her voice made my chest tight. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with a career transition. So, you did get laid off? Talia mentioned Pinnacle had massive cuts. Of course she did. It's not what you think. I'm working on something new. What exactly? You never explain. How could I? They'd never understand taking this risk, living this precariously for something that existed mostly in code and spreadsheets. I'll tell you when it's ready. I promise. After hanging up, I opened Instagram to distract myself. The first post, Talia standing beside her new corner office window, captioned, "Hard work pays off. Hashtag promotion announced, hashtag regional director." The comments overflowed with congratulations, including ones from my parents. I closed the app without liking the post. That evening, an email arrived from a venture capital firm I'd cold-pitched 2 weeks earlier. Intrigued by Cybertech's potential. Available to discuss on Tuesday? Morgan Chen, Helix Ventures. I almost fell off my chair. Helix was known for backing early-stage SaaS startups, exactly what I needed. But they'd expect a polished presentation from an established professional, not someone working from a studio apartment. I created a new email address, raysullivan@cybertech.com. Ray sounded more ambiguous, more confident than Rachel. I crafted a response as Ray, scheduling the meeting and attaching our preliminary metrics. For the next 48 hours, I barely slept, perfecting my pitch deck and rehearsing answers to potential questions. When Tuesday arrived, I transformed my bedroom into a makeshift office, hanging a plain backdrop behind my desk and borrowing professional lighting from a photographer friend. 5 minutes before the Zoom call, I smoothed my hair, applied minimal makeup, and straightened my only blazer. Morgan Chen appeared on screen, younger than I expected, but with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "So, you're Ray Sullivan?" "Yes, founder and CEO of Cybertech. I replied, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. The pitch went better than I'd dared hope. Morgan asked incisive questions that showed genuine interest, not just courtesy. When I demonstrated the working prototype, tracking freelancer hours and contracts through an elegantly simple dashboard, I saw the exact moment their skepticism transformed into excitement. We typically don't invest this early, but your background at Pinnacle gives me confidence. Let's schedule a follow-up with the full team next week. After ending the call, I danced around my apartment, giddy with validation. Someone believed in Cybertech in me. That night, my phone buzzed with a rare text from Talia. Missed you Sunday. Heard you're going through changes. If you need a reference at Meridian, let me know. We're always hiring an admin. The condescension burned. Admin? After 7 years as a product manager? I didn't respond. 3 weeks and 4 more investor meetings later, Helix Ventures agreed to seed funding, enough to hire 2 developers and a UI designer, with a small salary for myself. The catch: I needed to incorporate immediately and provide formal business documentation. I used the last of my savings to hire a business attorney who helped establish Cybertech as a legitimate entity with me, Ray Sullivan, as founder and CEO. My legal name appeared only in confidential documents. With funding secured, I finally rented a small office space downtown and hired my team remotely. They knew me only as Ray, the focused founder who communicated primarily through email and brief video calls. 6 months after my layoff, Cybertech had its first paying client, a digital marketing agency struggling to manage their freelancers. Within weeks, they referred us to 2 more businesses. Mom called again, her voice worried. We haven't seen you in months. Thanksgiving is next week. Please come. I'll try, I said, knowing I probably wouldn't. The gulf between my old life and new one had grown too wide. That evening, I logged into Facebook to post a job opening and noticed I'd been removed from several family photo albums. Curious, I clicked on Talia's profile. Her status update from that morning: having to unfriend negative people is part of growth. Surround yourself with success, not excuses. I checked my friend list. Talia was gone. A notification appeared from my aunt. Rachel, honey, Talia mentioned you're going through a rough patch. It's better to keep some distance while you figure things out. We're all rooting for you to bounce back. I closed my laptop and stared out the window at the city lights. They had written me off, the unemployed cousin. Too depressing to associate with. Little did they know I had just closed my first funding round, and this was only the beginning. 3 years passed in a whirlwind of growth. Cybertech evolved from my desperate gamble into a rising star in the SaaS landscape. Our freelance management platform solved pain points that larger companies hadn't even recognized yet, allowing businesses to seamlessly onboard, manage, and pay their contract workers through one integrated system. What began as a 3-person operation now employed 27 people spread across 4 countries. Revenue doubled each quarter. Industry blogs mentioned us as the platform to watch. Venture capitalists who had dismissed my early pitches now sent eager emails, which my executive assistant politely declined. I rarely appeared at industry events, preferring to work behind the scenes on product development while Jacob, my charismatic COO, handled public relations. To most of the tech world, Ray Sullivan remained a somewhat mysterious figure, the genius founder who built the platform but avoided the spotlight. My apartment had long since been replaced by a modest but comfortable condo. I still worked too much, slept too little, and wore pajamas whenever possible. But now I did it as the CEO of a company valued at $8 million. Family connections had grown distant. I sent gifts for birthdays and major holidays, but made excuses for physical appearances. My parents visited my office once, beaming with pride but clearly bewildered by what exactly I'd built. I never corrected their assumption that I was just a senior developer at Cybertech rather than its creator. The explanation would be too complicated, the questions too numerous. On a crisp October morning, I arrived at our downtown office earlier than usual, planning to review the code for our 3.0 release before the daily stand-up meeting. The space hummed with quiet energy, open-plan desks arranged in thoughtful clusters, meeting rooms named after famous inventors, and a well-stocked kitchen where our office manager had already prepared fresh coffee. "Morning, Emma," I greeted our front desk coordinator. "Anything urgent?" She handed me a stack of mail. "HR wants to see you when you have a minute. Something about new hires for the expansion." I nodded, flipping through the envelopes. "I'll stop by after I check the deployment logs." 2 hours later, after confirming our latest update had rolled out smoothly, I knocked on Priya's office door. As head of HR, she'd built our team from scratch, with an uncanny talent for finding people who thrived in our somewhat unconventional culture. "Come in," she called. "I've got the candidate profiles for the sales operations expansion. 5 really promising options." I took the folder she offered, scanning the resumes. "Any standouts?" "This one." Priya tapped a page. 10 years in tech sales, experience with SaaS products, excellent references. Just finished a successful run at Meridian Systems. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. There, in crisp black and white, was a familiar name, Talia Rivera. "Is something wrong?" Priya asked, noticing my expression. I quickly composed myself. "No, just recognizing the company. Good reputation." She interviewed with Jacob and Marcos yesterday. They were impressed with her enterprise sales experience and said she'd be perfect for helping us move upmarket. Priya tilted her head. "Should I schedule your interview with her?" My mind raced. Talia. Here. Working for me. The cosmic irony was almost too perfect. "No need," I said finally. "I trust their judgment. If they want her, make the offer." Priya looked surprised. "You're skipping your interview? That's a first." "I'm swamped with the 3.0 release. Besides, sales ops reports to Jacob, not me." After Priya left, I sat motionless, staring at Talia's resume. Her professional photo showed the same confident smile, though more polished now. According to LinkedIn, she'd risen quickly at Meridian before hitting a ceiling. Cybertech would be a step up for her career, a chance to join a fast-growing company with significant equity potential. She had no idea who owned that company. For a brief, petty moment, I considered rejecting her application. But that wasn't how I ran my business. If she was truly the best candidate, she deserved the position. A week later, Jacob stopped by my office. "Good news, Talia Rivera accepted our offer. Starts next Monday." "Great," I said, feigning casual interest. "Make sure she has everything she needs. Will you join the onboarding breakfast? The team would love to see you there." I shook my head. "I've got investor calls all morning. Please welcome her for me." The weekend before Talia's first day, I obsessively reviewed our internal communications protocols. Most employees knew me through video meetings and emails, but few interacted with me daily. As founder, I maintained a certain distance, not out of aloofness, but because it allowed me to focus on product development rather than management. This arrangement had never felt like a disguise until now. Monday morning arrived with an email notification. Talia Rivera has joined the #General Slack channel. Throughout the day, I watched from afar as she was introduced to the team, set up her workstation, and began training. Her profile photo appeared in our internal directory. Meeting invitations, including her name, populated the shared calendar. It felt surreal, like worlds colliding that were never meant to intersect. That evening, as most employees headed home, I received a message from our IT director. "Weekly system update complete. All users migrated to new email server, including new hire T. Rivera. FYI, she's been asking questions about meeting the elusive Ray Sullivan. Seems eager to impress the founder." A strange sensation settled in my stomach. Not quite anxiety, not quite anticipation. Then my phone buzzed with an HR notification. New message from Sales Operations Slack channel at Taliar. Just finished first day at Cybertech. Thanks everyone for the warm welcome. Quick question. When do we get to meet the mysterious founder? This Ray Sullivan must be some kind of tech genius to build all this. Or maybe just a spoiled trust fund baby playing CEO. Either way, looking forward to putting a face to the name. I stared at my screen, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Oh, Talia. If only you knew." For the next several weeks, I lived a peculiar double life. By day, I was Ray Sullivan, the private founder who communicated through carefully worded emails. By night, I became a digital voyeur, tracking my cousin's integration into the company I had built from nothing. I created a secure admin dashboard that allowed me to monitor Cyberteka's internal communications without appearing active. It wasn't about spying, I told myself, but about understanding how my cousin operated in a professional environment. After all, she was now handling relationships with our enterprise clients, representing the company I'd poured my soul into. Talia's first client call was a disaster. I watched the recording with a mixture of sympathy and vindication as she fumbled through our pricing structure, promising features that didn't exist and delivery timelines that were impossible. "She's got confidence, I'll give her that," remarked Marcos, our sales director, during our weekly leadership meeting. "But she's operating like she's still at Meridian. Their approach doesn't translate to our platform." "Give her time," I suggested, surprising myself by coming to Talia's defense. "The learning curve is steep." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "That's unusually patient of you. Last quarter you wanted to fire that dev who deployed buggy code." I shrugged. "Different situations. Sales is relationship building. It takes time." What I didn't say was that part of me, a small, petty part one wasn't proud of, wanted Talia to succeed just enough to stay, just enough to eventually learn the truth. 2 months into her tenure, Talia began finding her rhythm. Her sales numbers improved as she mastered our product offerings. In team meetings, she contributed useful insights about competitor weaknesses. She organized happy hours that boosted team morale. But her attitude remained problematic. During a virtual all-hands meeting where I dialed in with my camera off as usual, she interrupted Jacob's presentation about our mission statement. "Sorry to cut in, but can we address the elephant in the room?" Her voice carried that familiar tone of smiling condescension. "Why is our founder never actually present?" I came to Cybertech partly because of Ray Sullivan's reputation for innovation, but she's like a ghost. An uncomfortable silence fell over the video call. "Ray is heavily involved in product development," Jacob explained smoothly. "Her focus on building rather than administrative meetings is precisely why our platform is industry-leading." "Sure, but even Zuckerberg shows his face," Talia pressed. "Is she really that antisocial? Or just too important for the rest of us?" I muted my microphone before letting out a long, slow breath. The irony wasn't lost on me. Talia criticizing my absence when she had once mocked my unemployment. Some things never changed. Later that afternoon, I received a direct message from Jacob. "You might want to consider making an appearance soon." Not just because of Rivera's comments, but the team could use a morale boost with a 3.0 launch coming up. "Your call, of course." He was right. I'd maintained my privacy partly out of practicality and partly from lingering insecurity. The company had grown beyond my initial vision, and the team deserved to connect with their founder. It wasn't fair to let Talia's presence dictate my leadership style. Still, I hesitated. The next day, I logged into our project management system to check progress on the 3.0 release when a notification caught my eye. Talia had been added to the internal strategy channel, a space reserved for directors and above. I messaged Marcos immediately. Saw T. Rivera was added to strategy. Promotion, I don't know about. His response came quickly. Temporary. She landed the megacorp deal we've been chasing for months. Jacob thought giving her access to planning would help handle their complex integration needs. The megacorp deal. Our whale. The client that would push us firmly into enterprise territory and likely double our valuation overnight. Talia had somehow managed to close it when our previous 3 sales directors had failed. I leaned back in my chair, unsure whether to be impressed or concerned. That evening, I stayed late at the office, working alone after everyone had gone home. The cleaning staff knew to skip my office on nights when my light still burned. I was deep in code reviews when a noise in the hallway startled me. Voices, one of them distinctly Talia's. "I'm just saying, this place could be run better," she was telling someone. "The product is brilliant, but the leadership is scattered. This Ray Sullivan person delegates everything. Classic case of someone who got lucky with an idea, but doesn't have the chops to really lead. I froze, fingers hovering over my keyboard. That's not fair, replied another voice, Priya from HR. You've never even met her. Don't need to. The evidence speaks for itself. Hiding behind emails and recorded messages? Please. I bet she's some spoiled trust fund baby who hired developers to build her vision while she collects the glory. Anger flashed hot in my chest, not just at the insult, but at how wildly wrong she was. I'd built every early version of Cybertech myself, cobbling together code during sleepless nights while living on instant noodles. The investment came later, after I'd already proven the concept. You should be careful, Priya warned, their voices fading as they walked toward the elevator. Walls have ears. What's she going to do? Fire me after I brought in Megacorp. I doubled our enterprise client base in 2 months. Trust me, people like Ray Sullivan need people like me more than the reverse. The elevator dinged and they were gone. I sat in the silence of my darkened office, a strange laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep inside me. The situation had become absurd. Here was Talia, working for a company I created, bad-mouthing me while cashing checks I signed, completely oblivious to the connection. I opened our company calendar and made a decision. The annual retreat was scheduled for next month in Monterey, 3 days of team building, strategy sessions, and celebration of our growth. For the first time, Ray Sullivan would attend in person. It was time to step out of the shadows. The Monterey Bay Resort gleamed against the Pacific, its glass and stone architecture reflecting the late afternoon sun. Employees arrived in groups, excitement bubbling as they checked into rooms far more luxurious than our usual accommodations. After 3 years of hard work and explosive growth, the team deserved this celebration. I watched from my private suite as they gathered by the fire pits on the beach, drinks in hand, laughter carrying on the breeze. Jacob had orchestrated everything perfectly: welcome packages, scheduled activities, and most importantly, an agenda that kept my presence hidden until the right moment. My phone buzzed with a text from him. Everyone's here. Dinner at 7. Your grand entrance at 8:30 during the founders' Q&A. Ready. I texted back a thumbs up, though ready hardly described the storm in my stomach. 3 years of building in relative anonymity, and now I would face not just my team, but also the cousin who had mocked my unemployment while unknowingly working for me. For this moment, I'd prepared meticulously. Gone were the usual hoodies and jeans that comprised my work wardrobe. Instead, I wore a tailored charcoal suit that projected quiet authority. My hair, usually tied back for practicality, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard, but I needed to look like someone who commanded respect, someone worthy of the title founder and CEO. At 7:15, I slipped into the resort's restaurant through a side entrance, taking a seat at a private table with a clear view of the main dining area where my team gathered. Waitstaff had been instructed to serve me discreetly. From this vantage point, I could observe without being seen a final moment of anonymity before everything changed. Near the center of the room sat Talia, holding court at a table of sales team members. Even from a distance, her animated gestures and the attentive faces of her colleagues told me she was in her element. She'd always thrived as the center of attention, and apparently, that hadn't changed. "Anything else, Miss Sullivan?" asked the waiter, refilling my water glass. "No, thank you. Just the check when I'm ready." At 8:15, the team began migrating toward the hotel's ballroom for the evening's main event. I took a different route, meeting Jacob in a small preparation room adjacent to the stage. "Nervous?" he asked, straightening his tie. "Terrified," I admitted. "Not about the company or the presentation, but—" "Your cousin," he finished. I'd finally told him the full story 2 days ago. "Don't worry. After seeing your pitch deck, I can guarantee she'll be too shocked to cause a scene." The muffled sound of Jacob's welcome speech filtered through the walls. I peeked through a small window in the door. The ballroom was filled with round tables, each surrounded by Cybertech employees in cocktail attire. A stage dominated the front, currently occupied by Jacob at the podium introducing the evening's agenda. I spotted Talia seated near the front, looking polished in a royal blue dress, laughing with colleagues. There was something almost surreal about seeing her here in my world, still completely unaware of our connection. And now, Jacob's voice rose with practiced enthusiasm, the moment many of you have been waiting for since you joined Cybertech. For the first time at a company event, please welcome our founder, the visionary behind the platform that brought us all together, Ray Sullivan. The room erupted in applause. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pushed open the door and walked toward the stage, a spotlight tracking my movement. I kept my eyes forward, focusing on the podium rather than scanning faces. Jacob stepped aside, giving me an encouraging nod as I took his place. The microphone stood ready, the presentation cued on the screen behind me. I looked out at my team, brilliant, dedicated people who had helped build my vision into reality. And there, in the third row, was Talia. Her applause had stopped mid-clap, her mouth slightly open, eyes wide with disbelief as recognition dawned. I smiled. "Thank you all for that warm welcome," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. For those who have only known me through emails and occasional video calls, it's wonderful to finally meet in person. I'm Ray Sullivan, though some of you, my eyes flickered briefly to Talia, might have known me by a different name once. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Talia remained frozen, her face a mask of shock. I launched into my presentation, sharing the journey of Cybertech from concept to current success. I spoke about our humble beginnings, the challenges we'd overcome, and the ambitious roadmap ahead. With each slide, with each confidently delivered point, I could feel my team's energy rising. Except for one person, whose eyes never left my face, whose expression had shifted from shock to something more complicated, a mixture of disbelief, embarrassment, and what might have been grudging admiration. When I opened the floor for questions, hands shot up around the room. I fielded each one with ease, the years of intimate knowledge about every aspect of our product evident in my detailed responses. "Last question," I said, pointing to a developer in the back. "This might be off topic," he said, "but I'm curious. Why did you stay so behind the scenes until now?" Most founders love the spotlight. I took a moment to consider my answer, aware that Talia was leaning forward slightly, waiting. "I believe the product should speak for itself," I replied. I wanted Cybertech to succeed based on its merits, not personality-driven hype. But I've realized that leadership isn't just about building in silence. It's about being present for your team. After thanking everyone, I stepped away from the podium to sustained applause. As I made my way off the stage, I passed directly by Talia's table. Our eyes locked. "Hi, Talia," I said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear over the noise. "It's been a while." The color drained from her face as reality sank in. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I smiled again, not unkindly. "I'm the one who signs your paychecks. How's that for a pajama lifestyle?" Without waiting for a response, I continued through the crowd, accepting congratulations and fielding excited greetings from team members meeting me for the first time. Behind me, Talia remained seated, the realization of the past 3 years, her mockery, her unfriending, her recent criticisms, crashing down around her. Sometimes, silence spoke louder than any words could. The Monday after our company retreat felt different. As I walked through the office, employees who had previously known me only as a name on emails now greeted me with a mixture of respect and newfound familiarity. My revealed identity had transformed the company culture overnight, not dramatically, but in subtle ways that made the space feel more connected. I had expected to see an empty desk where Talia normally sat, perhaps a hastily written resignation letter, or at minimum, a request for a transfer to our satellite office in Chicago. Instead, there she was, hunched over her computer, intensely focused on her screen. She tensed visibly as I approached, her fingers freezing over her keyboard. "Good morning, Talia," I said, keeping my tone professional and neutral. Her eyes flickered up, then back to her monitor. "Morning, Ray." The name sounded strange coming from her, almost forced. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the weight of our history hanging in the air between us. "The Megacorp implementation plan is on your desk," she finally said, still not making eye contact. "I've scheduled check-ins with their IT team for Wednesday."
"Business as usual, then."
I nodded. "Thanks. Good work on that account." I continued to my office, feeling her gaze follow me, wondering what calculations were happening behind those eyes. Part of me had expected, maybe even wanted, a confrontation, an acknowledgement of the irony that had brought us to this point. But perhaps professional distance was healthier for both of us. 2 weeks passed with minimal interaction. Talia attended required meetings, submitted reports on time, and maintained cordial but distant relationships with colleagues who had previously considered her a social leader. The sharp, sometimes cutting humor that had characterized her earlier months at Cybertech disappeared. Through our analytics dashboard, I noticed something unexpected. Her performance metrics were improving. Client satisfaction scores climbed steadily. Follow-up response times decreased. Her sales conversion rate, already impressive, inched higher each week. Talia's reports are becoming more thorough, Jacob mentioned during our weekly one-on-one. Honestly, she's like a different employee. Less flash, more substance. "People can surprise you," I replied, thinking of my own transformation from corporate layoff victim to CEO. "Should we talk about the elephant in the room?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "The family connection? The team's starting to gossip." I sighed. "Let them. It's not relevant to our business operations."
But of course it was.
Human dynamics always affected business, no matter how much we pretended otherwise. That evening, working late as usual, I heard a knock on my office door. Talia stood in the doorway, a folder in her hand and an uncharacteristic hesitancy in her posture. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "What's up?" She sat, placing the folder between us. "I've restructured the enterprise client onboarding process. It's more efficient, requires fewer touchpoints, and should reduce implementation time by approximately 30%. I opened the folder, scanning her proposal. It was thoughtful, detailed, and potentially valuable, not at all what I'd expected. "This is good work," I said, genuinely impressed. "What prompted it?" Talia straightened in her chair. I realized I needed to contribute actual value, not just... She paused, searching for words. "Not just attitude?" I supplied. A flash of the old defensiveness crossed her face, then faded. "Yes." She stood to leave, then hesitated. For what it's worth, I never would have said those things if I'd known. "Yes, you would have," I interrupted gently. "Just not where I could hear them." The truth of this settled between us. "Fair enough," she conceded. "But I was wrong. About you, about what it takes to build something meaningful." She gestured vaguely at the office beyond my door. "This is impressive, Rachel. Or Ray. Whatever you call yourself now." "Thank you," I said simply. After she left, I sat back, feeling an unexpected lightness. No grand apology had been offered or needed. No dramatic reconciliation. Just a quiet acknowledgement of reality and a professional determination to move forward. In the months that followed, our interactions remained primarily work-focused. Talia never tried to leverage our family connection for special treatment. If anything, she worked harder to prove her values stood independent of our shared history. The team gradually stopped whispering when we were in meetings together. At the next quarterly family dinner, my first in nearly 3 years, Talia and I maintained a cordial distance. Neither of us mentioned Cybertech or our professional relationship to the relatives who had once witnessed her mockery of my unemployment. Some truths were better left in the workplace. "You two finally bearing the hatchet," my mother whispered as we helped clear the dinner dishes. "Something like that," I replied. Later, as we left, Talia caught my eye across the driveway. "See you Monday, boss," she said with the faintest hint of a smile. I nodded. "Don't be late." Driving home that night, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. The humiliation of being laid off had become the catalyst for creating something truly mine. The mockery had fueled my determination during the darkest moments of uncertainty. The next morning, I woke early as usual. My laptop waited on the kitchen counter beside a fresh cup of coffee. Through the window, dawn painted the sky in gentle strokes of pink and gold. I opened my email to find a detailed analysis from Talia about potential market expansion opportunities, sent at 2:37 a.m. I smiled, recognizing the late-night work pattern of someone driven to prove themselves. I still wore pajamas when I wanted to, still coded at midnight, still built and dreamed and pushed boundaries. But these days, I no longer needed anyone's validation. Not even from the cousin who once laughed at me, now focused on earning the paychecks I signed.